Following a 2-week recess over the Easter holidays, senior officials of the Tshwane Metro Police Department took turns in the hot seat to explain their actions, or lack thereof, in the face of alleged tender manipulation discovered in the WhatsApp exchanges of an outsider, Sergeant Feign. Their explanations, however, were far from convincing. I'm Canny Maphanga, and welcome back to the Madlanga Wrap.
Sergeant Nkosi had no right to interfere in any procurement-related matters within the TMPD. He has no authority. He had no permission. I was not aware that he is busy interfering. I don't know Sergeant Nkosi. I never made contact with him. The first time I saw Sergeant Nkosi was on the Madlanga Commission.
Did you not notice that it got a disproportionate number of allocations? Alarm bells should have rung when this entity's name keeps popping up whenever there are ad hoc allocations.
In the time that the invoices came to me for co-signing, I did not pick up anything immediately.
I think we must be honest when we come to this commission. Maybe we have taken it for granted. This is one of the things that must be compulsory.
TMPD boss, Commissioner Yolandi Faro, took to the witness stand and appeared oblivious to the alleged abuse of tender processes under her watch, which implicates her suspended Deputy Police Chief, Umashi Dlamini, Tshwane CFO, Gareth Nisi, and a SABC officer who falls outside of the TMPD network, that is Sergeant Feign. Faro told the Commission that she learnt of this alleged conduct when it went public through the work of the probe.
Sergeant Nkosi had no right to interfere in any procurement-related matters within the TMPD. He has no authority. He had no permission. I was not aware that he is busy interfering. I don't know Sergeant Nkosi. I never made contact with him. The first time I saw Sergeant Nkosi was on the Madlanga Commission.
This defense, however, did not negate her expected oversight responsibilities as a TMPD head, which are designed to protect the department from this kind of risk. It became unclear whether this was poor oversight or whether Faro was allegedly complicit in the abuse of internal systems to serve particular interests. While this question remains in the air, Faro is able to concede that the City of Tshwane and TMPD systems have been compromised.
It would appear that in relation to the tenders that we have looked at, that the SCM system within Tshwane and TMPD is compromised. What is your comment on that?
I agree.
When probed on how this could take place under her watch, Faro claimed that she had no reason to doubt or not trust who she described as dedicated officials that are implicated in the alleged wrongdoing.
It is clear that the large beneficiary of the irregular deployment is an entity called Gubis 85 Security Solutions Pty Ltd to the tune of about or almost 14 million rand. I was not particularly aware of the role of Deputy Commissioner Dlamini and Chief Financial Officer Mr. Gareth Nisi in all of this. I took and trusted them as dedicated officials. I placed reliance on their advisors, and they had never given me any reason to doubt or suspect them.
Now, while Faro continues with her homework on the questions that still remain in the air, the mantle of accountability shifted to the next subordinate, that is TMPD Deputy Commissioner Sean Bolhayes, who equally seemed oblivious to the glaring red flags in the ad hoc security services that bled the city of millions.
Did you not notice that it got a disproportionate number of allocations compared to the rest of the entities? Its allocations were far higher than those of other entities. I'm asking this in the context of your testimony that on paper everything looked proper. That may well have been so, but it should have, or rather alarm bells should have rung when this entity's name keeps popping up whenever there are ad hoc allocations.
Thank you, Commissioner. Look, I did not, in the time that the invoices came to me for co-signing, I did not pick up anything immediately.
Those very same alarm bells also did not kick off for Bolhuis, who served as the caretaker of the tender, which is under scrutiny, when a junior Metro official proceeded with the site allocations to Gubi's 85 Solutions. Bolhuis charged that this took place without his instruction.
During January 2025 to February 2025, as the caretaker, I never allocated these sites to Gubi's 85 Solutions Pty Limited, nor did I instruct Inspector Piri to do so, nor did I give him permission or the delegated authority for him to do so.
But questions remain. Where did junior officials get the confidence to bypass their seniors and continue with the ad hoc services, which were seemingly highly irregular? The Commission turned to a member of the Bid Evaluation Committee who was responsible for this tender, that is suspended TMPD Director for Asset Protection Services, Chukudu Malachi. Malachi, however, appeared defensive as the Commission warmed up on the litigation that followed this security tender relating to missing documents.
You are again being defensive. And yet again, you are being defensive on something that, although it relates to impropriety, from where you are sitting, there has been no suggestion, or at least I'm not aware, that the missing documents were as a result of any act of impropriety on your part. Thus far, I'm not aware of such evidence, but you are being defensive.
There may be more to this defensive posture. Was it because of the movement of the tender bids from supply chain management to another location, which allegedly led to missing documents?
I am not aware of any missing bids documents regarding the removal of the bids from supply chain management premises. The BEC took bids from supply chain management premises to Tshwane Leadership Academy, Bremos.
Or was this defensive posture about the fact that Malachi, from the evidence, failed to comply with the instruction to end the ad hoc services, which led to a junior official continuing with the deployment to Gubi's 85 Solutions, leading to the question, was it deliberate or negligent?
So, your service level agreement tells the service provider that you have to have something in writing, which constitutes an agreement between us and you. PIRI issues a deployment letter, which is signed by PIRI and by the service provider. So there is an agreement, right, between the city and the service provider. So what I'm putting to you is, if PIRI had not issued a deployment letter, there would be no written agreement between the city and, in particular, the department that's responsible for administering these agreements, right? There would be no agreement between the service provider and the city. And if Gubi's went on to do the work, the city would be able to say, well, we don't have an agreement with you. It would have a defense to that. But PIRI has denied the city that defense. So you can't blame the department. The department requires the service, yes. But you have a service level agreement that says it has to be reduced to writing, and PIRI does exactly that. And my gripe with you, or my issue with you, is had you stopped PIRI in December, when you became aware that PIRI is a free agent, he goes about doing things that are way above his pay grade, when you became aware of it, had you stopped him, the 14 million rand that was incurred for January and December would not have happened. It wouldn't, as a fact, it would not have happened.
I agree, Commissioner.
Yes, and that's my basis for saying you are responsible for that financial cost to the city, which is caused by PIRI, and you are responsible by omission. You failed to act. And the question is whether, was it deliberate that you don't act when the facts called for you as head of department to act? Did you deliberately hold off and therefore created an environment where PIRI does what he does? Or you were negligent? And if you were negligent, it's grossly negligent. which in fact borders on intention. That's what I'm saying. That's a basis for my saying you are responsible for causing that irregular expenditure.
To help us unpack these revelations relating to the city of Tshwane and the TMPD, we are now joined by Outer CEO, that is Mr. Wayne Duvenage. Wayne, thank you so much for joining us once again on Connecting the Dots.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Hi, Canny, nice to be with you.
Thank you, Wayne. Well, it's not clear at this stage whether this conduct relating from the city of Tshwane and TMPD evidence was deliberate or not, or whether it could be attributed to poor oversight. But we are seeing that it's clear that these managers failed to exercise their responsibilities in a manner that would minimize the risk to the city.
Yes, I mean, sure, we see this everywhere, by the way, and you've got to ask yourself, is it deliberate or is it just ineptitude? Very often it's a combination of both. People who are not fit for the role are put in positions, and then they themselves are manipulated by people higher up the chain. So it would seem to us that Mr. Malachi's got a lot to explain here. Either way, he needs to be held accountable, and this is where, the rubber needs to hit the road. We do see very little when it comes to accountability, because what happens, and we saw this at Tembisa Hospital and across the country, what happens is when he's put in the corner and he has to be the fall person, that's when the revelations of so much else comes to the fore, and others start to become implicated. So we're watching this unfold. And I think the Commission is doing a fantastic job in their questioning.
And what must the Commission make of the superiors in this regard, the conduct of Commissioner Yolandi Faro, Sean Borges, in the face of all these irregularities, and how long it took for it to be picked up, and then once getting on that witness stand, just passing off the responsibility to subordinates? What must the Commission rather make of those particular sentiments shared by the senior managers and the recommendations that must flow from that particular conduct?
They cannot let the senior management off the hook. The senior management are there to ensure good oversight, strong oversight. They should be doing their work. They should be investigating and watching the expenses, making sure that all the due process has been followed. They cannot say they didn't know or they were unsure. We believe that they are equally as guilty in this whole process of wrongdoing and maladministration. So this issue that they weren't aware or weren't sure about it or didn't know the individuals is absolute nonsense. They've got budgets to follow. They should be looking at the numbers, looking at all the tenders that are issued. And I think, as the one commissioner was saying, can't you see the patterns here? Can't you see one company getting so many of these contracts? Why aren't you digging a little deeper? Why aren't you just applying rational logic in these matters? So I believe that they knew what was happening and they were just looking away.
Indeed. And one wonders, Wayne, how an outsider such as Sergeant Fanny Nkosi was able to pretty much brazenly, allegedly manipulate the system, even leaving a trace through those WhatsApp exchanges. And do you think, just looking at the city of Tshwane, that just might be the status quo in that particular municipality?
Yeah, look, we see it in many municipalities. People from the outside who are connected right to the top. The chain of command sends the messages down and indicates to the individuals, look, this individual's from the outside, he's bringing people in, allow these tenders to flow to the chosen individuals. Here's how we will disguise the process and map it out. This manipulation of supply chain management, it is rife throughout so many departments. We see it higher education, transport, we're seeing it in the metros now, in the police. It is a common modus operandi, and it really does boil down to, if you just follow the chain up, it becomes political. It's politicized. The political players are involved, and this is where politics interferes with administration, and tenders just continue to be manipulated. Too many people. The sad thing is that you and I, as South Africans, lose out because so much money that should be going to where it should is lost to middlemen, and there are lots of middlemen in this process.
And if we're looking at this as something that is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of local government, as that is the focus with this particular evidence, it then raises the questions of the reforms that are needed from the Commission with respect to the tender system within local government. Can you even save this kind of supply chain management process within local government or in government as a whole and in the criminal justice system and those respective entities? Or should this tender system be done away with completely? I know you're faced with this question a lot of times, but is that not the ultimate solution to deal with this kind of gap that always seems to be manipulated, no matter how hard you discuss this issue of SCM processes and how to tighten up on the tender systems?
Yeah, look, the best way to deal with this, we've got good laws in this land and in this country. We've seen also that on the 1st of April, the president signed in 2 more laws dealing with professionalizing government and the public sector. Now, the best way to deal with supply chain management interference and manipulation is to make all tenders absolutely transparent. Transparency, we always say, is the enemy of corruption. And if people know ahead of the time who the tenders are being awarded to, you can start joining the dots and seeing, but what's happening here? And I always quote the story a number of years ago. If the local community in the Eastern Cape town where a new set of toilets, lavatories were built for a school, it was a small set of toilets built for 12 million rand, and the money had changed hands and the lavatories were not at the standard. Do you think that local community would have allowed that to happen had they known that the tenderers were linked to people higher up and that it was grossly overpriced by 3, 4, 5 times? So here's the issue around procurement and tenders. It needs to be absolutely transparent. We need to involve the communities. They need to see what's happening. And even when a tender is awarded, the biggest problem often is that the money starts to change hands and the work isn't done. And so if you get the community's eyes onto making sure that the houses, the clinics, the wastewater treatment plants and so forth are being built, that milestones are being reached, all of this is publicly available, I think we'll start getting our hands on top of corruption. But until then, while it is done behind closed doors, external interference, it's going to be a challenge.
All right, thank you very much, Wayne. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your input here on Connecting the Dots. That was Wayne Duvenage, the Outer CEO, reflecting on the flaws in the tender system, as well as the kind of reforms you would need to strengthen it, such as transparency. Now, this discovery of alleged tender manipulation flows from the WhatsApp exchanges of Sergeant Nkosi with the CFO, Gareth Nisi, and with the suspended TMPD Deputy Police Chief, that is Umashi Dlamini. Find out what the latter had to say about the allegations against him after the break. And welcome back to Connecting the Dots. Now, Dlamini was at pains to distance himself from any wrongdoing in the alleged tender manipulation saga and offered denials to the allegations against him. This is despite evidence showing that he did share documents with Sergeant Feign Nkosi, someone who is outside of the TMPD network.
I have not assisted directly or indirectly any bidder in respect of tender TMPD 2 2016 17, TMPD 1, 24, 25, and TMPD 3, 24, 25.
Yeah, move on.
Whether I have influenced, facilitated the payment of any service provider, in particular Gubis 85 Solution Ltd. I have not influenced the payment of any company, including Gubis 85.
Now, despite these denials, there is a message between Nkosi and Dlamini that crept up on the latter. This is where Dlamini tells Nkosi that he has quote-unquote captured the Tshwane CFO, Gareth Nisi, and the pair discuss Nisi as their new Judah. What did he mean by that?
I don't think it is correct, or we will be doing justice if we take one word in isolation and make a conclusion. In clarifying the entire statement, I want to indicate the context The climax or the turning point of the statement which I refer to, uvutondaba ngesizulu. It's on the word ujuda wethu, because I don't think the commission understood or anyone understood what it's meant by ujuda wethu, and it was concluded that capture in a sense of a state capture that I'm referring to, which is not true. Ujuda wethu, meaning indumiso, so it's praise. Ujuda wethu, that's mean praise. It signifies, gratitude. So the capture in the sentence is referring to attention. It was in reference to the appearance of the background picture I was looking at. Much.
Now, Dlamini has not escaped the hot seat yet, as he will have to return to the probe to be tested on his version, which has seen some portions flagged as a serious concern and simply untenable. Several questions emerged from Dlamini's evidence-in-chief. Why did he communicate with an outsider, Sergeant Feign, about the security tender if he, in his own words, felt that it was a conflict of interest? Why did he exchange documents with Nkosi about the said tender, which may have been internal and not public as he claims? And why did he communicate with Gareth Nisi, a fellow colleague, through Sergeant Nkosi, if there was nothing untoward about the pair's communications? And lastly, why did he take an interest in Nisi and Nkosi's close relationship, which he described as a capture and one that would be beneficial? Now, while this evidence has exposed the deep flaws in the supply chain management system, it also prompted Justice Madlanga to reflect on how Section 217 of the Constitution, which mandates the manner in which procurement must take place, is being used against us. That brings us to the end of this week's wrap. The public hearings will resume on Tuesday, the 14th of April, where suspended EMPD Deputy Chief, that is Julius Mkhwanazi, is expected to return to the stand for more evidence. Join us again next week with our new time slot of 4 p.m. to unpack what else could possibly be revealed through Mkhwanazi.